Hey YouTube, it's Mike. All right, so I have a question for you. This, of course, is the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup channel. And I have a question for you based on a few comments I've been getting recently, which is, what is the difference between a discard, when you get discarded by your narcissist or your borderline? What's the difference between a discard and a breakup? So let's be clear about that. So first, just in case you're new to the channel, this channel is for people who have been in romantic relationships with borderlines or narcissists, untreated, of course, toxic, and you're trying to get your life back together. You're trying to heal from the trauma of the abuse that you suffered through. Bear in mind, if you are somebody who has BPD, there is treatment for it. DBT therapy actually can help you if you put effort into it and work into it. You can learn how to manage your symptoms and have love and happiness and relationships and all that good stuff. But that's not what this channel is about. This channel is for the partners of the borderline or the narcissist, and learning how to recover from that. And I'll tell you exactly how I did that. You can click on the join button also to find out exactly how I recovered from the most toxic, destructive relationship experience of my life. So what is the difference between a discard and breaking up with somebody? So first off, let's be clear. The word discard is spelled D-I-S-C-A-R-D. It drives me crazy when people spell it D-I-S-G-U-A-R-D, like you're somehow taking your guard away. It's not. Discard. What does discard mean? It means to throw away. You know, when you have trash and there's a trash can and you've got, an empty wrapper in your hand, you're going to discard it. You're going to throw it in the trash. That's what discard means. It means to throw something that you've used up, that is used up and no longer has any value. It's just worthy to be thrown on the trash heap. It has no value or any use left. You discard it. You throw it away. That's what a discard means. That's why when it comes to relationships with narcissists and borderlines, when the narcissist or the borderline ends the relationship, it's called a discard. It's not called breaking up. Other people break up with you. Now, that doesn't mean that non-cluster Bs doesn't mean that they can't be narcissistic and cruel and can't suddenly break up with you or cheat on you, or, this isn't exclusive to borderlines and narcissists. Non-narcissists and borderlines do this kind of stuff. Similar kinds of stuff. But there is always a difference, by the way. The way that the borderline ends the relationship is unique. There's nobody else that ends relationships the way borderlines do. It's a unique thing. When my borderline was discarding me, and I went back 2 weeks later after being told I was the worst person in the world and she couldn't have anything to do with me and she couldn't have any contact with me because I was destroying her self-esteem, because I had said the phrase magical thinking. Just because I had just said that phrase, that was, according to her, that it was a long thought out strategy where I, for 4 months, had been strategizing as to how to devalue her and take her, her self-esteem away. And so because of that, I was dangerous and she could have nothing to do with me ever again. And so after 2 weeks of that, and I couldn't understand, because literally as I said that phrase, we were actually hugging and laughing back and forth, talking about ourselves and our relationship. And so she took that phrase out of context and, a day later decided to tell me. She threw me away. She did more than throw me away. I mean, I've talked about it before, but I won't get into that now. A discard means you've been thrown away. You've been eaten. If I were to eat this protein bar and chew it up and eat it. There would just be the wrapper left, and I would discard it. I wouldn't save it for later. I wouldn't put it in a safe place. I wouldn't sell it. You know, like right now I'm selling one of my surfboards. I'm not going to trash that and throw that away. It's valuable. It has worth. I have too many surfboards, so I'm going to sell it. But you're going to give it to somebody else who will make a home for it. You know, you have a cat. You can't take care of your cat, and you have to move to another country. You're not going to throw your cat in the trash. You're going to be sad about it. You're going to find somebody you care about it who will take the cat in. The cat will have a home. But when you get discarded, it means you were thrown away. You were used up and thrown away. So people have been using this word a lot in the comments section. And they use the phrase, when you discard the borderline. Or what happens if I discard the borderline first? And you know, it's hard for me to answer the question. The real question is, what happens if I leave the borderline? But I get distracted by the lack of understanding of what that word means. It's a valuable word in this instance because it's something that doesn't happen. You're in a normal relationship, even if things go bad and you guys break up, you don't use the word discard because that's not what happens. A normal breakup really is that. It's two people that are trying to come together, and for whatever reason, they clash. And then one or both of them ends the relationship. But that's what it is. It's an ending of a relationship. It's not a discard. Discard, like I said, means you have no more value to me. You are completely worthless, because that is not only what it feels like, but that is the actual case. The actual reality is, in their mind, you have no value. Not only do you not have any value to them, but in their mind, you have no value. You don't even exist. Just like this protein bar exists, and then there's this wrapper. But the wrapper without the protein bar, there's really nothing to it. There's no substance to the wrapper. So it's just thrown away. It doesn't exist anymore. When I throw wrappers away, I don't think about it anymore. That's what the borderline does. When they discard you, they throw you away. And the word discard has even more meaning to it because of the way that it happens. Again, normal relationships, even if they're dysfunctional, two people are clashing as a result of trying to come together. They're trying to come together and they're clashing. So they repeatedly clash. They repeatedly have an issue about, you don't spend enough time with me, or I can't be in this relationship for this reason, or you don't meet my needs, or but you're trying, you're making adjustments, you get in arguments, but it's two people trying to come together, and then finally they both give up, or one of them gives up and walks away. That's not what happens when you're the borderline. When you're the borderline, what happens is that you get close. And correct me if I'm wrong, in your experience, if you've been with a borderline, what will happen if you look at it in the past is that the discard happens right after you have actually bonded. You've had the best sex of your life, followed by pillow talk. You've been on the phone, and you seemingly worked through some issue, and now you love each other. And the last words you hear from them are, "You're the best boyfriend in the world. I love you more than anybody." Click. You go to bed thinking, "Oh man, I'm so happy I met this person." And you wake up the next day to a text on your phone, or the phone rings, or email, or worse, nothing, just crickets. Nobody's there. You've been blocked. That's a discard. And that is completely different. So if you're on the receiving end of the abusive relationship and you end that relationship, it's not a discard. You're not discarding them. You are walking away from the abuse. Ironically, that is exactly what the borderline thinks they're doing. Because after they've told you that they love you more than anybody else on the planet and you're the best person that ever existed, literally the moment that you hang up the phone, click, and you stop talking to them, you fade out of their existence. You stop existing to them. And they can't tolerate that feeling. And so they confabulate inside of them to match the emotions of feeling terrified and abandoned and discarded. Their feeling of being discarded is so uncomfortable that they confabulate. They create a reality within themselves to match their emotions. That reality does not correspond with actual objective reality. You are sleeping peacefully somewhere thinking loving thoughts. You can't wait to see them again. In fact, you're going to bed thinking about how you're going to buy them flowers or buy them an engagement ring or something like that. And but in their mind, you have discarded them, you hate them, you are now sleeping with 6 other women, and you're burning all of the pictures that you have and deleting her out of your life. That's what's going on in her mind in order to justify the feelings that she has of being discarded. And as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm pretty sure that's part of what would happen with me and my borderline ex, because we didn't live in the same city a lot of the time. And so we would talk on the phone and we'd have these great conversations, and I'd hang up, after her telling me, you're the best, most beautiful, loving person I've ever known, click. And then I'd wake up to a text or an email the next morning saying how she had a bad dream and she can't be with me anymore. And I was totally shocked. How did that happen? I'm realizing now that, the fact that the phone conversation ended in her mind because she's a borderline, I started to disappear. And that must have been very frightening to her. So let me take a look at some of the questions here, because it also points out, in my experience, it points out some flaws in your thinking. So let me just say, of course, if you are with a borderline or a narcissist, by definition, you are codependent. Codependence is a dynamic. It's not a personality disorder. People who are chronically codependent, like borderlines, are codependent. Narcissists are also codependent. But also the partners of borderlines and narcissists are by definition codependent. Because the codependence is a dynamic where one person must take up the slack for somebody else's dysfunction. If you've been with a borderline and you've had to take care of them and you've had to put up with things and you've had to deal with abuse and you've been discarded and hoovered and discarded, and they, what they do, then you're taking up the slack. You're taking up the majority of the weight of the relationship. Maybe you're taking up the whole relationship. You're the only person that's keeping the relationship going as you walk on eggshells, making sure not to make any mistakes. That is a dynamic, and that's a codependent dynamic. The other aspect to codependence, bear in mind there's no such thing as codependence in the DSM, meaning if you go to a psychologist and ask about codependence, there isn't any actual official definition of codependence. So this is why it's so difficult to get healing if you've been a partner of a narcissist or a borderline, because psychologists really aren't trained to heal codependence. They don't have the tools unless they themselves have gone through some codependent scenario and gone through some kind of 12-step work. They don't have any tools. They don't even really know what to do with it. Another definition of codependence is an external locus of control. External locus of control is a fancy way of saying other people's opinions, actions, thoughts have an effect on your identity. So one of the things that people deny, by the way, codependence has within it, one of the symptoms of codependence is denial. So there's nobody who's more vociferously defensive against the idea of being a codependent than a codependent. And so people on the channel, when I say you're a codependent, they get very bent out of shape and they say, I am not a codependent. A codependent is somebody who's dependent on other people, and I'm not dependent on anybody. Really? Then why are we talking about somebody that discarded you? Why are we talking about how much pain they caused you? Obviously, you are dependent on them, because if you weren't, you would have left the first time that they were abusive to you. But you didn't leave the first time they were abusive to you. That was one string of many abuses. And you stayed and you kept changing and you kept doing and giving unconditionally to somebody who didn't appreciate it and understand how to give back, and took your love and then turned around and weaponized it against you. That means that you are dependent on this person to love you. If that weren't the case, like I said, you wouldn't even be able to get hoovered. You know, we don't see this anywhere else. I mean, the word hoover, it's a great term because, you know, after you get discarded, you're thrown away like a piece of trash. After you get thrown away like a piece of trash, then what happens to trash? It gets sucked up by the vacuum cleaner. It gets sucked up by the hoover. We in the States, we don't call them hoovers. We don't call it hoovering. We call it vacuuming. A hoover is a brand of vacuum cleaner. So a Hoover is one brand, but I understand in other places in the world they use that to just mean to vacuum you up. But that's what it means. To hoover you is to vacuum you back up. They discarded you, they threw you on the ground. You're a crumpled up wrapper they've licked it clean and thrown it on the ground. And then they've decided that, oh, I can still see there's a little bit of protein bar stuff stuck in the corner there. Let me get the hoover and I'm going to hoover it back up because I'm not done eating. There's more. So the other thing about the discard, what I was going to say earlier is how ironic it is because when at some point either one of two things happens in a relationship with a borderline. One of two things. One is, if you're lucky, I wasn't this lucky, but maybe you're this lucky. If you're lucky enough to realize that this is damaging to you, and you make the unilateral decision within yourself that you are going to cut off all contact because you've realized this isn't going to go anywhere, and you end and break up with the borderline first and then break off all contact so that they can't hoover you. That is one outcome, and that is the ironic fate for the borderline because that means they didn't do their job right. Because the strategy of the borderline's mental illness, not their conscious strategy, but the strategy of their mental illness, is to pull you in as deeply as they can, have you fall in love with them and connect with them and love them as deeply as possible, and then break up with you or discard you before you realize that this relationship is damaging. That's the strategy. So if you break up with them before that time, it means that that their strategy didn't work, and it's very upsetting to them. Which is why if you are the one who's lucky enough to have that happen, what ends up happening is that they're going to try and keep you. They're going to go out of their way to try and keep you from leaving them, because their experience is they can't live without you, but the experience of their mental illness is, no, I was supposed to do that. I was supposed to break up with you first. You beat me to it, so I got to bring you back in and then get you to fall in love with me so that then I can discard you. And this also is something that happens. You've broken up with, I did this, I tried doing this. At least once I said, hey, maybe we just shouldn't do this. This doesn't seem to be working. No. I swear to God, I'll make it work. I promise I'll make it work. I swear I'll make it work. And then I bought into it, and then I would get discarded. So that's one way. One way is if you're lucky enough that you end it because you are strong enough to realize it's not going anywhere. But the other way, which is really what is almost determined is going to happen, is that they will discard you when you least expect it. When you feel the most vulnerable, when you feel the most safe, they're gonna wait until you feel very safe, where you feel loved. There will be something that will give you the experience that, okay, now that I've done this, she won't leave me. She'll stay with me. She'll now accept that I love her, and she'll feel safe, and I can relax. And when you just begin to start relaxing and thinking that maybe I don't have to, maybe it's going to be okay now, that's when it's going to happen. When you're on your guard, they're not going to leave you then. Not when you're on your guard. When you're not trusting them, when you're legitimately not trusting them, not they think you're not trusting them, that's something else. But when you're legitimately not trusting them and you're not committing and giving yourself, they're not going to leave you. So let me get to a couple of comments here about this. Let me see the most recent one. Let's see here. Something about, I'm sorry, hang on one second. Oh, there it is. Person asks, sorry, hang on a second. Where did it go? Maybe they deleted it. They might have deleted it. Anyway, somebody asks, here it is. Does it help to keep them away when you are the one who discards them? There's a lot of things about that question that bother me. But the answer that I gave was it doesn't matter. Because first off, you don't discard the borderline. Because that isn't your motivation. Your motivation isn't that you have used them up and gotten everything you wanted and now you're done with them. That's their projection onto you. They are projecting that you're going to do that, which is why they do it to you. They're fulfilling their own projection. It's their own self-fulfilling prophecy. But that's not your motivation. Your motivation is that you're beat up, you've tried to make it work, and if you are the one that walks away, it's because you're limping and you're in pain and you just can't do it anymore. So it's not a discard. Your feeling isn't, I hate this person, I have to get rid of them. Your feeling will be that you realize it won't work, and so you give up. It will also be, it won't be a discard on your part, because the discard happens when your partner really loves you. And then when you break it off out of nowhere, that's what a discard is. But that's not what happens if you're breaking up with a borderline. It means that you had the awareness to realize that they're going to harm you, so you walk away. So it bothers me when people use that. But the other thing that bothers me about this question is I sense in it a desire to be hoovered. Because if you have made the decision which is what I tell you, when I tell you to do the 4 things, the first thing I tell you to do is to go no contact. Going no contact means this, that you will do absolutely whatever the hell it takes. Work 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week to earn the money to hire a lawyer, whatever. You will do whatever the hell it takes to make sure that they cannot contact you. When you have made that kind of commitment, you know going into it that it might be difficult, but you don't care how difficult it is. I'm going to make sure that they never contact me again. That shows that you have an awareness of what you're dealing with, that you're with somebody who unfortunately has a very tragic mental illness that is, they're going to harm you if they're not in any kind of treatment. So when somebody asks, does it help? In other words, what you're asking is, will it be easier on me if if I'm the one that ends it? There's a doubt in there. There's a fear. And really this question has a fear to it, which is, I'm afraid. And you should be afraid because you've been trained to be afraid. I'm not saying you should be because I think you should be. You should be because that's the natural result of the training that you've received from your borderline. Because the borderline will make it so that if you do anything that makes them feel unsafe, they're going to make your life a living hell. So you are trained early on to make sure to never make them feel uncomfortable, never make them feel insecure or uncomfortable. And so you don't even give yourself the option to leave, because you know what that's going to do. You know, some of them fall on the floor. Some of them will cut themselves right in front of you. You know, I heard about a guy, this was a long time ago. Looking back on it, she was probably borderline. But he had broken up with her, and she came to his house and knocked on the door. And when he opened the door, she shot herself in the chest with a gun. This is the kind of you know that a borderline might do that. They also know that they can manipulate you with that kind of fear. This shows the psychopathy of them. They don't have any empathy for you. They will make you as frightened as need be in order to keep you around. If that's their intention, is to keep you around. So I understand the fear. Does it help if I'm the one that leaves them, or should I? And at the same time, I have people asking me things like, what can I do to get my borderline to leave me? What happens if I'm mean to her? If I'm really mean to her, you know, one guy asked me just today, well, what if when she calls, I'm really mean to her and I make her hang up on me? And it's like, you don't understand what you're dealing with. That's not going to work. It's not going to work with them. The reality is that the more abusive you are towards them, the more they're going to stay with you. Because if you're abusive to them, in order to be abusive to them, because that's what this person was asking me, if I'm abusive enough to them, will that make them go away? No. They, you know, the borderlines stay with narcissists for a long time. You know, my borderline discarded me quite early into the relationship, and that's because I'm not a narcissist. I was actually a good, loving, kind boyfriend. So I would make her feel loved, and that would flip her switch and she'd discard me. Narcissists don't do that. Narcissists abuse borderlines and keep them, you know, play the game with them and say, you know, you have to earn my love, and they're abusive to them. That's what makes the borderline stay with the narcissist so long. So this idea that you can manipulate a borderline to leave you or discard you doesn't work like that. They won't respond to that. It's only going to make them, you know, the drama and the craziness and the abuse. They like the abuse. Those of you listening to me know that a large portion of borderline, well, I don't know about men, but borderline women like BDSM. They like kinky, rough sex. They like to be tied up and abused and called names. There's a reason for that. It's because they were abused as you know, little kids. Maybe not physically. Lots of times they were physically abused. So they feel, you know, it's a comfortable place when you abuse them, when you devalue them. They chase after that. So thinking that you're going to be mean to them is going to make them discard you. It's not going to work. They don't discard you because you were mean to them. They discard you because you were loving to them. That's why they discard you. So the only thing that I tell people to do, you know, when people ask me these questions, the first off, some people ask me this question because they secretly want to be hoovered back. Because what I hear in this question, I already responded to this guy, so I think he's got it. Yeah, I think he's doing the work. But what I heard in this question was a lack of commitment to do whatever the hell it takes to keep them away. And that means you, number one, you don't engage with them. You don't respond to them, you don't talk to them, you don't interact with them, because they will, look, let's be very clear about this. You're not dealing with the average person. You're dealing with somebody who has a very specific mental disability. They do not live in the same reality as you. They also do not have the same type of empathy that you have. Borderlines have a type of empathy, but it's not true empathy. True empathy means that you're able to get inside somebody else's skin, and without any attachment to your own desires, you're able to objectively go, oh, that's what's best for that person. Borderlines have an emotional response because they can project themselves onto somebody else, and so they can imagine, they can look at somebody and cry and weep at how much pain they're in, but what's really happening is they're projecting their own issues, their own emotions onto somebody else. Nothing wrong with that either. Everybody does that, but that's not true empathy. So when you threaten to leave the borderline, or when you do something abusive to the borderline, they're going to come back and they're going to say whatever the hell it takes in order to get you to stay. And they lose their empathy. And they also lose self-empathy, because they will make promises that they themselves either don't want to or aren't capable of following through on. And so when they're manipulating you, like if they threaten to harm themselves, or if they do harm themselves, because you're threatening to leave, they're not having any empathy for you whatsoever. Completely no empathy. It's very cruel. It's very abusive. It's abusive not to let other people have their thoughts and their feelings. It's abusive when somebody says, I don't want to be in this relationship. If you really love somebody, what you say to them is, I'd love to be with you, and I'm willing to do whatever I can to make it work, but I also want you to be happy. And if you're not happy, then if you really think you should leave, then I understand that. It's breaking my heart, but I want you to be happy. That's empathy. Borderlines have no empathy when you are threatening to leave them, and they're triggered in their fear of abandonment, and they will manipulate you and do whatever it takes in order to keep you from leaving. So anyway, those are those questions like that. Questions of what happens, what can I do to get them to break up with me? In fact, one guy was so abusive about it. He was saying, I'm going to treat her like crap. And I said, that's not going to work. He says, well, what should I do? And I sort of jokingly said, well, if you really want to get her to discard you, then you should ask her to marry you. And he went, great, I'm going to go out and buy a ring. And I said, hang on, I'm only kidding. That's abusive. You're not intending to follow through with that. And by the way, because you don't mean it, she's not going to bite. She's not going to respond the way you want. She's going to intuitively still be drawn into staying with you, because there's going to be a part of her that feels that you're not really telling the truth. The only thing in my experience that will drive a borderline away, if that's what you want, is if you lay down boundaries. So going no contact and absolutely being 100% committed to going no contact, making it impossible for them to contact you, that is a commitment to your boundaries. And so that can work only if you're fully committed to it. But the other thing that'll work is if you put down boundaries and this won't work all the time. It worked in my case. If somebody says, how do I get them to discard me? I'll tell you what I did. I told my borderline ex, because I was incapable of leaving. I'm just being honest with you. I was not capable of leaving. I was too attached and too codependently afraid. The thought of being without her was intolerable. But I had enough sense to know that something was really wrong with her. I didn't completely understand what borderline personality disorder was, but I came to realize that she had it, and I knew that the relationship was not going to work as long as she was untreated. So I put down the boundary, which was, I can't be in your life if you don't get therapy for borderline personality disorder. So if you want me in your life, you're going to have to do that. I can't be your friend. I can't be your boyfriend. I can't be your lover. I can't be in your life at all unless you go get therapy. Now, what I would have done, well, let me finish that. That was what pushed her over the edge. She ended up finding some other nonsensical reason to break it off with me, but that was really the reason. The reason was that she, wasn't going to follow through with that. She was going to try and manipulate me into staying with her for as long as possible. She may have even, future faked herself, telling herself that she's going to go get therapy and it's all going to be okay. But the truth is she never really had any intention. And the reason why that's important is because when a borderline gets therapy, they need to do it because they want to get help. When they realize for their own health and happiness that they need help, that's the only reason they should ever get into therapy. If they get into therapy because of you, it is virtually guaranteed that the therapy won't take, and they will end up abandoning the therapist and discarding you. And you will have gone through all of the craziness of staying with them and the hope that it's going to work, and then being the taskmaster and saying what's going on with your therapy, and I'm going to go with you next time and make sure that you're meeting. You've done all that, and then finally it'll blow up in your face. That's what's going to happen. And the truth is that they don't get any real healing until they've been in therapy, because they choose to for about 10 years. It takes about 10 years before they're able to manage their symptoms. Now, that's a generalization, but that's what I've heard. But anyway, they're not going to, the amount of work that needs to be done, they need to go to therapy. They need to have their little DBT. I don't mean little in a negative way. They need their it's actually not little, it's big. They have to have their big DBT workbook, and they have to be doing their daily DBT therapy exercises and meditations and all of that. And they need to be going to group therapy as well. I think this is, if I was, for codependence, there are 4 things you need to do to heal. I would say that borderlines need 3 things. The 3 things they need is they need DBT therapy. They need to be doing their DBT exercises and homework every single day. And they need to be going to group therapy. I think those are the 3 things they need if they want to ever be able to heal and have a relationship. Now, don't hold me to that because I'm not an expert in borderline personality disorder therapy. Anyway, I'm talking around in circles, but point is that this question of are they going to come back? Are they going to hoover me? What do I need to do to keep them from hoovering me? What do I need to do to get them to leave? All of this, the underlying sentiment underneath all of that is an insecurity. An insecurity within yourself that you can't do it. And I get that. Which is why you need to be doing the 4 things. When I tell you to go no contact, I know that as you move to go no contact, you feel very insecure about it. You don't know if you're going to be able to follow through. So you have to treat it like an addiction. You have to treat it like alcoholism or drug addiction. You just have to go one day at a time. So for the rest of the day, I'm going to make sure that she can't contact me. And then tomorrow, you have to go no contact again. So when people say, what can I do? There's an underlying insecurity because you know that you don't have the ability to stay away from them. You know that you're either going to go look them up on Facebook, or if they contact you, you know you're going to crumble. You know that they're going to hoover you back. And you may even ask me, people ask me this all the time. If she hoovers me back, does that mean that she loves me? How often do they hoover? I get all these kinds of questions from people who supposedly want out of the abuse, but they keep asking questions that reveal that underneath it all, they really can't tolerate the thought of being away from them, and they want them back. All right, so I didn't really say a whole hell of a lot what I wanted to, but I'm happy to look and see if there are any comments or questions. I do prefer questions, but I realize on this channel people are going to say whatever the hell they're going to say. Then later says, help, the borderline hoovered me, turned the tables and discarded me. I'm literally dying here with blood pressure super high and no sleep. Need help. What can I do? The 4 things. Here they are. Are you ready? If you haven't heard this before, this is guaranteed. This will guarantee you to be healed from this borderline relationship. If you want to be healed and you're willing to do whatever it takes, are you saying yes? I know exactly how it's done, but you have to do all 4 things. If you don't do all 4 things, it won't work. I know because I did it and it completely healed me. So from the relationship. So the first one is you have to go full no contact, which means, as I said, you go out of your way to make it impossible for them to contact you. Don't give me any excuses. I don't care how much money it costs you. I don't care if you have to throw your phone in the river, abandon your home, move to another country, call the cops, get a lawyer. I don't care. If you're not willing to do whatever the hell it takes, you have not gone full no contact. You have to make it impossible for them to contact you. Number 2, you have to work all 12 steps of coda.org with a sponsor. You can't do it by yourself. You have to do it with another person. And then you must sponsor someone else. If you haven't done that, you haven't done number 2 of the 4 things. Number 3, you can do this along with number 1 and number 2. You don't have to wait, but you get a therapist who understands borderline personality disorder. And then 4, this is really just step 11 of the 12 steps, you do daily meditation. If you do number 1 and number 3, it won't work. If you do number 2 and number 4, it won't work. You have to do all 4. Actually, if you had to pick one, I would pick the number 2, which is the 12 steps, if I had to pick just one. But the thing is, you can go no contact. You can do that. You can work all 12 steps of coda.org because it doesn't matter where you live in the world. You can go to a Zoom meeting online. So as long as you have internet, you can go to a Coda meeting and you can get a sponsor and you can work the 12 steps. So don't give me any bullshit excuses about why you can't go to Coda. If you don't want to go to Coda, that's fine. Just own that, but don't tell me you can't do it. It's not. That's not a worthwhile excuse. You can get some kind of counseling. You may have difficulty being able to afford a therapist, but if you look online, you can find free online counseling. I know because I looked online and I had no problem finding it. And then it doesn't cost any money to learn how to meditate. So don't tell me you can't do all 4 of these things. So to answer your question, Vin, later, you do those 4 things. And if you aren't willing to do those 4 things, then I have no sympathy for you. I empathize for you. I have pity for you. I know that you'll be in pain, but I also know that you weren't ready to do the work to heal. And that's true. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to be as difficult for you to heal from this relationship as it is for a heroin addict to kick heroin. And I'm not kidding. It's going to be as difficult. You will go through withdrawals. You will go through craziness. You'll be in a heck of a lot of pain. So the only way is to do those 4 things. Is it possible there's another way to do it? Yeah, but I don't know what it is. Jimin's Precious Penicillium asks the question, which is one of the most codependent questions I've ever heard. He says, does narcissist ever get their karma? What makes you think they aren't living their karma every single moment of their lives? I understand the question. You think that they've harmed you and they've gotten away. They haven't. I can promise you that whatever it is that you would do to them in order to get them to understand, or even if you wanted to get revenge, there literally is nothing you could do to them that would even come close to the amount of hell that they live through every second. And there's nothing that you could say or do, no amount of judgment that you can give them that would come close to what they do to themselves. The self-hatred that they experience on a moment-by-moment basis is beyond your comprehension. And so any effort that you would do to try and get them, like if you got them alone in a room somewhere and you were going to, even if you were going to do something harmful to them, that would be, they would appreciate it because it would be better. This is why borderlines like to be, that's why sometimes they cut themselves. That's why they like kinky sex. They like to be tied up and abused, because the pain of that relieves them of the pain that they're always experiencing. So does the narcissist ever get their karma? Yes, every second of every day. Let's see what else. Then later, mine was into BDSM. Okay, all right. So I really appreciate questions more than anything else. Kathy has a bunch of things to say. Okay, those aren't a question. Let's see. All right, so Kathy says she's in the process of healing. I don't know if she's doing the 4 things or not. Then later says, I was in Coda. Well, what the hell happened? Because you sound like a really fucked up codependent. Forgive my French. I'll go back to your original statement. Help. The borderline hoovered me. Well, if you're in Coda, how did you get hoovered? I mean, it happens. If you're in Alcoholics Anonymous, the alcoholic goes out and gets drunk, but, they know better. You knew better. So you obviously didn't work the 12 steps. If you did work the 12 steps with a sponsor, you stopped doing it. Now I really have no empathy for you. I have pity for you. But, you're acting like a victim. I'm literally dying here with blood pressure super high, no sleep, need help. What can I do? You've already been to Coda and you're acting as though you have no idea what to do. You mean you don't know how to pick up your phone and call your sponsor? You don't know how to get out a pad of paper and write down a 4th step? You telling me you don't have any idea how to use those steps at all? Do you see what I mean? The codependent is just like a drug addict. You're wrapped up in your drug addiction and you're acting as though you're a victim of circumstance, and you're not. You don't have an excuse. Somebody who is a codependent and has never been to Coda and has, doesn't know any better, they at least don't know any better. For them, they are victims of circumstance. When I come around and I say, you chose this, everything you've done is your choice, they go, what are you talking about? But you, Vin, how could you possibly not know? You know better. I mean, you're welcome on the channel, and I'm sorry you went through that. That's what happens. But that's the only way out. I gave you all those 4 things. You should have known that. Somebody else could have told you that. I didn't make that stuff up. I didn't come up with that on my own. I had to have somebody tell me what to do, and that's what they told me to do. Ronnie Cheryl, you have not done all 4 things. This person says, hi, Mike. I'm Ronnie. My girlfriend left me 2 months ago. She was BPD. I starred debt now. I don't know what that means. I started with no contact, but I went to a psychologist and I started meditating. Your words really helped me, thanks, but I'm so hurt. So you got to do all 4. It's great that you went no contact, and it's great that you're with a psychologist. But in my experience, that's not enough. Psychologists have an important role. When you mix psychology therapy with the 12 steps, assuming you have a good therapist, you have an unbeatable way to break through. The truth is, if you do those 2 things, you will have done thing number 1 and thing number 4. But I spell it out like that because some people need to know that. Because it's important. If you go to 12 step, if you go to Coda and you go to therapy, but you don't go no contact, it won't work. And there are some people that do that. unbelievably some people that do that. But you have to go completely no contact, work the 12 steps, and if you're working with a therapist will help you go even deeper into your unconscious issues, your first issues that started it all, your mommy and daddy issues. But if you're still hurt, means you haven't done enough. I'm not judging you, it's just a fact. I'm here telling you that I have zero pain, zero. I have zero pain associated with my borderline ex. I know that that's impossible for a lot of you. That would have been impossible for me. If I had not done that, I would still be attached to her. I would still be in pain. I would still be angry or hurt or still thinking how wonderful it was. I wonder what she's doing. In fact, I'm certain that either I would have contacted her or I would have allowed her to contact me. So you've got to do all four, Ronnie, if you don't want to be hurt. That's my experience. You can take it or leave it, but I'm telling you the truth as I understand it. Jameson, question. Discards I've done already and some recently. Reconnecting with people too soon in my healing puts me over capacity and I get appearance of discard. How can I know my limits but reconnect? So Jameson, I don't really know what you're talking about because I don't have enough specifics. So again, discard doesn't mean breaking off contact with an abuser. That's not a discard. So I know Jameson. Jameson is a client of mine, so I know I wouldn't say this to somebody if I didn't know all of their details. But Jameson, I don't know that you are yet able to know the difference between a discard and actually breaking off contact in a healthy way. To you, if you break off contact, it's going to feel to you like you're discarding them. And so what I'm hearing in that is that you see yourself as an abuser who sometimes discards people. And that's not my experience of you. I'm okay to accept the idea that maybe that has happened. Maybe you have been, narcissistic and abusive in relationships and discarded people, but that's really not my take on you. So let me read your question again. Discards I've done already and some recently. So that's not what you've done. You've gone no contact. That's not a discard. Reconnecting with people too soon in my healing. So does that mean you were hoovered? I don't know what that means. What is wrong with reconnecting with people? How can it be too soon? The only way it can be too soon is if that person is a dangerous, damaging influence in your life. You reconnect with me all the time. Every time you and I talk, we're reconnecting. There's no too soon. You're reconnecting with me now. You're not doing anything too soon. I'm sure you don't even have any doubts about reconnecting with me at this moment. So that leads me to think that you're judging yourself way too harshly. My suggestion would be to take that to your sponsor and ask him or her about that. I'm assuming you have one. How can I know my limits but reconnect? Talk to your sponsor. I don't have enough information. Or, next time we talk, if you want to give me, all the details, I'll know. But again, main thing with you, Jameson, always the same thing. You just beat yourself up. You judge yourself for everything. And hopefully as time goes on, well, not hopefully, assuredly as time goes on, you will learn how to love yourself and assess yourself more objectively and be more kind to yourself. Tanisha Lulu question, how do you deal with toxic shame and guilt for leaving your narcissistic psychopathic family? I feel so much better. I feel like a human when I'm away. There's 4 things that you do to deal with the toxic shame and the toxic guilt. My answer is always going to be the same. I mean, that's a huge question. That's a lifelong question. You haven't asked me, how do I disconnect from my borderline partner? Well, that's easy. You go no contact. How do you deal with toxic shame and guilt? That's a lifelong thing. I mean, that you got from your family of origin. They infused you with that. It's going to take you a lifetime. How do you do it? Work the 12 steps. You sponsor other people in the 12 steps. You talk to your therapist. Go to group therapy. Group therapy for me is one of the most painful and most healing things that I do. And I recommend it to everybody. Find a good group to get in. Because a group, when you're dealing one-on-one with the therapist has to do a bunch of dancing with your unconscious, has to dance with your projections and your transference, and at the same time, not victim blame you, and listen to you, ask you a bunch of questions, learn things about you. Whereas a group is a bunch of other people who are there, and they reflect back to you your unconscious. And it's really good, because then you get to see, and you get to learn how to communicate with, because therapists will deal with your strange, weird, abusive stuff, and they learn how to, because they don't have any agenda. They know that they're going to deal with some of your weirdness. But the people in group aren't there to dance with your craziness. And so when you interact with them in a way that triggers them, they're going to tell you, and you're going to have to learn how to communicate to them in a way so that they can hear you, and vice versa, how to get somebody else to communicate to you in a way that you can hear. And this is one of the most powerful ways to work through your toxic shame and your guilt. So I guess the short answer to your question, assuming you're doing the 4 things, is get into some group therapy. Tanisha says, I get moments of guilt and shame, but I understand it's not my own guilt and shame. Well, so guilt and shame is anger. Guilt is anger. You don't experience it that way. You feel bad. You feel like you've done something wrong. I'm a horrible person. But what's really happening is you're taking the anger that you want to give out to somebody else, and you're turning it inward. This happens very young, when we're little kids, and you are 2 or 3 years old and you hate mommy for whatever reason. When you go and you tell mommy you hate her, mommy doesn't respond positively. She slaps you across the face, or she shuns you, or she shames you, or something. And you get the message, oh, I can't have any negative feelings. I'm bad if I have negative feelings. So then you learn to punish yourself before somebody else does. This is called guilt. Guilt, by the way, has nothing to do with actual remorse. Remorse is not guilt. Remorse is when you go, I can understand if I was that person why that would be damaging to me. Oh, wow, I regret having done that. What can I do to fix it? That's not what guilt says. Guilt is, I'm so horrible. I'm such a bad person. Let me do whatever. Please just love me. I'm just horrible. There's nothing. It's psychopathic. It's narcissistic. Guilt is narcissism. Because guilty people, what do? They create a bunch of drama. Look at me. I'm so guilty. So I'm not judging you. We all do it. If you've got guilt, you have toxic shame, it's narcissistic. So the more that you learn how to love yourself, the more you will learn, you won't have that response. This is why in the 12 steps, there's the 9th step, which is when you know that you've done something that's harmful to somebody, you seek to fix that. Now, sometimes you can't do that. You can't fix, going back to somebody that you've harmed is not helpful to them. So instead, an amends to that person is to never do it again to somebody else, or to go feed the homeless, or, go do something for somebody else. That's how you heal the damage you may have caused somebody else. You cheated on let's say you're married and you cheated on your wife. Some people do this, one of the stupidest things you can imagine, which is when your wife will never find out about it, she is blissfully ignorant and thinks that that you've been faithful to her. But there was that one night in Vegas when you got drunk, a couple of years ago, and that was a mistake. The most selfish thing you could do is to sit her down and say, I have something I need to tell you. No, don't, unless you're going to want to destroy the relationship and harm her, keep your mouth shut. So what do? You make amends by making sure that you love her even more, that you help other people who are about to cheat on their wives, something like that. That's just an example. Anyway, so how do you get over toxic shame and guilt? Do the 4 things, and if that's not enough, go to group therapy. Um, let's see. Vin later says, intellectually I knew, but not emotionally. Well, that's a really fancy way of saying you were in denial. Look, codependence is an addiction. It's the same. It has the same kind of your brain functions the same way that drug addicts and alcoholics, sex addicts, gamblers. It's the same chemistry within the brain. The neurology is the same. And what happens? Alcoholics, drug addicts, sex addicts, gambling addicts, they are in denial. What gets them in trouble is they get into denial. I can have just one drink. I can have half a beer. I'll be all right. I can smoke one joint. I'll be all right. I can have one hand of poker. Just one quarter in the slot machine. I'll be okay. The brain will do whatever it has to do to get you into your addiction. So you knew better. I don't know if you worked the steps or not or had a sponsor. You didn't say. But even that isn't enough. You have to do it on a daily basis because that is going to be with you. Your codependence is going to be with you for the rest of your life. Sorry, but it will. So you have to do the work. What else? All right, that's not a question. Tanisha Lulu says codependency is a sickness as well. I mean, you can call it a sickness if you want. You wouldn't be wrong. I would call it an addiction. I think that's a better way of looking at it. But yeah, there's, codependence, alcoholism, drug addiction, like I said, all those other addictions, it's all the same thing. It's all the same deal. And it all comes from the same root. The same toxic shame, the abandonment issues. Actually, that's not entirely true. There are people who have alcoholism and drug addiction who didn't suffer that as children. So for the most part, sometimes there are people, actual addicts, who haven't gone through that. But for the most part, the root is the same. It's the same with borderlines and narcissists. It's that same root of, anyway. I'm going down a rabbit hole I don't want to go down right now. Vin Later says, how can we become a client? Are you taking clients now? So Vin Later, the clients that I have are from my other website. I did have a website where I was taking counseling people from here, but I stopped doing it because I'm not a therapist. I don't want to be a therapist. It's just too difficult. It's just too hard. And to be honest, to counsel people from this site, I'd have to charge like $400 an hour just to make it worth my time. And so there's no need to do that. The point that I want to give people is just get them where they need to go. So Vin Later, instead of becoming my client, my suggestion is to get your ass to a CODA meeting. And if you don't have a sponsor already, get one and work the steps again and start talking. Get phone numbers from people in CODA so that you can call them up and get their advice, get their help. That's going to be much more helpful for you, because all that happened, the few clients that I had from this channel is I was basically just telling them, listen, you need help. They were wanting to ask questions about why does the borderline do this and what, and it was like, look, those questions are meaningless. You need help. And I basically tell them the same things I tell you guys for free, which is get your ass to meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps. So that's the best thing you can do for yourself. At the moment, I'm not taking clients, but if you want my happiness, then go get a sponsor and work the steps, and then I'll be as happy as if I had taken you on as a client. Jameson's son, clarification, talking about with friends, not breaking contact. So I got to be honest with you, I don't understand why hanging out with friends is something you have to take time away from. I mean, if they're your friends, they're your friends. Are these people, if you're having this kind of difficulty reconnecting with your friends, I don't understand it. So there's something about it I'm not missing. Are they toxic? What is it about that there's something about it. There's something that ain't right about that. Because you don't have a problem reaching out to me. You don't have a problem reaching out to your sponsor, other people I'm assuming other people in Coda. You don't have a problem reaching out to them. Why do you have a problem reaching out to your friends? So again, we need to talk, and I need more information. And I don't need to know about it, but your therapist or your sponsor should be able to help you better than I can right now in this setup. Honest feeling, Jameson says, I feel that my eagerness, my excitement, doing the 4 things, thinking I was ready, and then not following through with reconnection, I used up goodwill and can no longer recover those friends. There's something about it that doesn't make any sense to me. Your friends are your friends. Why? I don't understand. If they're your friends and you haven't had contact with your friends because you've been busy healing yourself, your friends aren't going to, you say, hey, they're going to say, hey, I haven't seen you in a long time. How are you? So again, something's not right. I don't know what it is, but there's something weird about the friends. Why is it such a weird, touchy subject? There's something about it I don't understand. What else? Nothing else? No other questions? All right. So I babbled myself into, I think, beat whatever horse I was. I think I beat multiple horses to death today. So anyway, bottom line is there's no such thing as discarding an abuser. You cut off contact with them. You don't discard them. The other thing is that borderlines and narcissists never break off their contact with you, even if you haven't talked to them in years. In their mind, you are still pasted to them. They have taken you hostage. Your borderline girlfriend, no matter how many people she's been with since you, hasn't forgotten about you. Still thinking about you, talks about you to her new boyfriends all the time. Mine used to do this thing where she would go onto Facebook and she would show me, here's my ex-boyfriend from 5 years ago, and here's my ex-boyfriend from 2 years ago, and what do you think of him? And she would want me to judge these people. They never let go. So even though it is a discard, they never disconnect. That's one of the aspects of a discard. A discard is throwing somebody away, but keeping them in your back pocket. So it would be like taking this wrapper, crumpling it up, and then stuffing it in your back pocket. That's a discard. When you break contact with somebody or you have a normal breakup, it's actually a splitting of an energetic connection. That energetic connection is gone. How do I know that? Because you've had other relationships that have failed and you don't think about those people, but you think about that borderline. In fact, you can't stop thinking about them. When they break up with you, no matter how abusive they were, you can't let go of them. It means that the borderline still has an energetic connection to you. They never let go. So that's the ironic thing about discard. All right, let's see what else. Jameson says, it's that all of my friends are all over the world and I've been silent and doing it all online. I don't understand what the problem is. So what? So you reconnect. If they're truly your friends, they're healthy to be with, and they love you as a friend, then, if you have to apologize for, say, hey, I'm sorry I've been radio silent, but I've been going through a lot of family stuff and I've been needing to get some therapy and, but I'd love to reconnect with you. There's just no need for all the drama around it if they really are your friends. I think you're making too much of a big deal out of it. Unless they're dysfunctional, in which case then something else is going on. What else? Elvin, okay. Elvin, I guess Elvin is borderline. She says, that's actually so true. I noticed myself bringing up old people in new relationships. Yeah. I mean, that's not uncommon. Everybody does that to some degree, but borderlines, they never let go. And that's the ironic thing. They can't attach, and they also can't let go. Anyway, so I'm assuming that they can work through that in their DBT. All right. So that's it for me, guys. Hope you're doing well. Stay safe and healthy, and I will see you next time I see you.